Hello, this is 9 to FI, a financial independence podcast where we focus more on the retire early side of FIRE. I'm Josh. I retired, I hate that word, at 48 after 25 years in the corporate world. I'm joined by my co-host Elliot, who is near the end of full-time employment as well. We share a path to early retirement, challenges that we've faced, and what life looks like on the other side, including struggles and opportunities that life keeps throwing our way. We're an ad-free podcast, but if you would like to support us in any way, we have links in the show notes and video description for books and other products that we use and love. Thanks for tuning in. Let's kick it to the episode. Hey, Elliot, how's it going?
Pretty good. How about you, Josh?
It's going pretty good here as well. So I wanted to talk to you today about an article that came my way, that it was kind of a special article that I don't think everyone has access to, from the Mad Fientist. And I shared it with you the other day. But just for the audience's sake, I guess I'll give my best introduction to who the Mad Fientist is in case there's anybody listening that might not know who he is. I guess I would consider him kind of one of the OGs of the original FIRE community, the one that came along probably in the late 2010s, early 2010s, where it was save aggressively as much as you possibly can and retire as early as you can. And he had some really great content in those early days that was around, I think he just really went into in depth in a lot of specific areas like withdrawal strategy and how you can pull out of your 401k without penalty and things like that. And over the years, I think he retired probably 10 years ago or so, maybe a little bit less than that. And he's become less active in the community and actually became sort of a musician. He's released some music and it's kind of a
synthesizers. Yes. I actually backed his most recent music project.
Oh, okay. So did this article come your way before I sent it to you?
Probably so, but that would require me to actually be a active participant in my email, which I view as just a nuisance that I try and avoid like the plague too.
Well, I gave him the $2 for it as well, because, and I do enjoy his music. I've only listened to it a couple times, but it had, I think, 4 tracks on the latest. But I saw the headline that was "Why I Left the FIRE Movement and You Should Too," and that got my attention.
I was gonna say that one is certainly a clickbait title if I've ever heard one. Right in the FIRE world is. I'm sure that one probably got some views right away.
Yeah, it probably helped boost his album sales there. And it was just $2, like I said. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. I want to see what he has to say about that. So it starts out, the first 3 lines, FIRE is not a movement. FIRE is not a religion. FIRE is not a community. And I was like, whoa, that's really serious there, because that's all we hear is FIRE is a community. It is the FIRE community. We're in the FIRE community. All of those things. So I was really surprised that he started out like that. And I guess it was kind of thought-provoking.
Yes. Yeah, certainly bold. I mean, I think how many people we say, FI is my tribe and the FIRE is spreading, FIRE is better with friends. It's kind of all those things that we're saying, that Brandon from Mad Fientist is flying in the face of and saying, no, that's not it. And I'll paraphrase a bit because I don't have the article right in front of me. I probably should go grab it. But, he basically says that FI is just being more intentional with your money and really optimizing your life in a way to optimize on the things that are actually important to you in this world. And FI isn't that focus, or shouldn't be that focus, right? Much in the same way that I think a lot of people would say, like I mentioned last week on the podcast, or last time we recorded, that I am reading The Art of Spending Money right now. And, this isn't a unique idea to the book, but that money is just a tool, right? Money's not anything to be worshipped. It just allows you to do more things. So, yeah, I mean, pretty bold statements from the Mad Fientist, but how did you react to that?
Yeah, that lead in there that you mentioned, you paraphrased it pretty well, but I'll just read that sentence here. It says, "FIRE is simply being a bit more deliberate with your spending so that you can save and invest more than average in order to buy your freedom a bit earlier than most. That's it. Just like FIRE, money isn't any of those important things either. Money is a tool, and it's nothing more than a tool." Yeah, I totally agree with you, and getting into that topic there, still, and he goes on to say how when you kind of get into the community, you are all for trying to learn how to be more deliberate with your spending and trying to learn how to get there a little bit faster, get to financial independence a little bit faster. And the money part of it is once you solve for that, there's a whole lot of life left after that. And I think that's what I've been kind of experiencing these last few months since I reached the top of the mountain, so to speak, and left the full-time job, is that I don't find myself needing to participate as heavily in the quote unquote FIRE movement as I used to. And that's going to look a little different, for everybody. But for me personally, it means that I mentioned to you the other day, I'm not really listening to podcasts anymore. I'm still going to the in-person events. And to an extent, I can see that over time, I might back away from some of that. And I don't necessarily mean the local stuff, but the campfires and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would echo a lot of your same sentiments. I mean, this is the first year that I'm not going to economy since I started going to economy. Part of that is just born out of, hey, conflict with my family's own timing. It intersects with my kids' spring breaks, and so if I have to make that decision, my family wins out to me. But to that same point, you're right on the money. Is that I think it starts to become, when you're in the community for so long, the content becomes pretty stale, right? There's only so many ways you can say the exact same thing. And you're like, yeah, I know what this is. I've already optimized for this. I've already solved for this problem. I'm already optimizing here, there, and the other. And so if you're not really getting the content per se, then what are you getting out of it? And I think for myself, like I've said, even for the reasons that I've gone to economy or can't find in the past, that the reason that I go is specifically the community. And I think like, to give Brandon some credit, he does say, like, at the beginning of your journey, I think there is certainly a place for those types of activities, is to find other people that show you that this is possible, right? This isn't some strange fantasy that some internet person has said that you're like, I have no idea if this is actually a reality or not. You see other people that do it and allow you to affirm some of the decisions that you make. But yeah, eventually you kind of settle into the messy middle or the boring middle, whatever people call it. And it's like, yeah, everything's kind of on autopilot in a lot of ways. So what are you gaining out of the content? Like I've listened to thousands of hours of FI content. Am I really deriving something new by going to that next Camp FI or that next economy or my local case study?
Yeah, it's funny that you say it like that. I told you yesterday that I listened to the latest Choose FI episode, and definitely not throwing shade on those guys whatsoever. But I know that they have been at this now for, I think it's like 9 years, and probably it's in the many, many hundreds of episodes. I don't know what it is now, but it's ebbed and flowed with the type of content that they've had. But now this year, I think they're trying to come back to almost, I forget what they called it, but it's like the best year ever. But this week's episode that I was listening to, which had Jonathan back on the show, which was really cool. I mean, I like him. He's got a lot of energy, a lot of passion, and they were talking a lot about how to calculate your FI number. And, for me, I don't necessarily need to know that information. I definitely appreciate what they're doing, though, because somebody needs to be out there just continuously advocating to bring more people, more, just to continue to spread the message. And hopefully at some point it becomes a lot more mainstream than what it has been. And so I applaud them for continuing to do that, but I would have a hard time just continuing to year after year, month after month, just like giving a quick plug for here's how to calculate your FI number. Here's the number of years that it's going to take, all those things, all the basic stuff. But I wanted to kind of highlight one of the sections here in Brandon's article. He says, sure, going to FIRE events is beneficial when you're first starting out. Meeting others pursuing FI allows you to see that it is possible so that you don't think you're crazy, and you can pick up ideas about how to do it better and quicker. But at a certain point, you figure out the big stuff and everything just goes on autopilot for years. That's what you mentioned. At that point, it doesn't make sense to stay immersed in the FIRE world. What I see happening, though, is everyone who's good at pursuing FI tends to latch on to that identity and that community, usually at the expense of all the other interests and communities. And I just kind of laughed whenever I read that, because even for me personally, I think I started going to Economy the year before you did, and I was hooked. I remember that first in-person event. We went around the table, introduced ourselves, and I knew that I was within a few years of financial independence and early retirement, but I still was like very much, yeah, I don't know about this, and never had met a person in real life that had been on it. I listened to all the podcasts, read all the blogs, and so by the second or third day, Lori and I, that's when we kind of mapped out my timeline for when I was going to leave work. So for me, it was, the meeting real people so that I don't feel like I'm crazy really hit home with me. But then, like we were just talking about, you kind of get to that point where you make the friends and you make the connections, and it's nice to see those people and all of that, but it gets harder and harder. And then now I feel like the community has grown so much that there's all these events that, you could make a full-time job of traveling and going to all these things. And of course, nobody is advocating for doing that, but I know there's people in the community that are going to a lot of these things, and that's great for them. I'm glad they found their tribe, their people, their community. But I think I'm lucky enough that I still have a community outside of the FI community that over the last couple of years, I may have lost sight of a little bit. And I was like, oh yeah, I do have, extended family, extended friends, and like all these other interests that are communities to themselves that I need to not lose sight of.
I don't know. I think we're going to have to rip your FI card away, Josh. If you have friends outside of the community, that's against the number one rule of the FI Club, right? No, yeah. All joking aside, I'll have to ask Don this, whether we hit the cutting floor with this one. But yeah, my wife will give me trouble some days that I am a dutiful attendee when it comes to local FI events. It has to take a near act of God for me to a local Choose FI event. And I know that you and I are pretty similar in that regard, as we make it to most of them, and our significant others, for whatever reason, don't get to attend as many as we do, certainly.
I can share all the reasons.
Yeah. For us, it's hard because, sure, we have to go get a babysitter in order to do that. If we're going to go get a babysitter, is that really what we want to spend our time doing, is being our dutiful FI card holders in attendance of the local case study? Probably not. But at the same time, there has been talk amongst us of, hey, are you continuing to get stuff out of just going to another case study? It's yet another social event that it's like, yeah, for me, I view it as seeing my friends, right? I have built friendships, obviously, yourself included, out of our local community. And I think that we're starting to see that as we have more social and other types of gatherings outside of just a meeting, right? Is we have microcosms of the group that are going for different activities. I know that we've talked about frisbee golf, so yeah, we want to go have a frisbee golf outing and things like that. So in Dawn's eyes, like that makes so much more sense to go gather about something that you want to go do than necessarily just go talk about FI stuff, which I think is exactly to Brandon's point of his email. And when I first read this, I was like, oh, Dawn's going to be 100% on board with kind of this point. Is like, this can't, everybody just, how many people say your identity is your work identity? You can't just replace your work identity with your FI identity and make that a thing. I mean, I guess you can, but that's what certainly Brandon is saying. Yeah, like that's not the most important thing in your life, I don't think, and probably shouldn't be.
One of the things that I've struggled with here lately in our local group is that I almost feel guilty that I'm taking someone else's spot, if that makes any sense. Because I know that the capacity that we can have at most of the events that we've had is limited. And here I am, I'm a guy that's, very familiar. I'm not an expert by any means on any of this stuff, but like you said, am I getting something new out of these case studies? I would much rather give my seat up to somebody who's brand new or on the journey or coming along and trying to make sure that they are getting to their own in-person event and not take up that seat. But that's like a hard line to follow, because then, do I then just kind of like slip away like that?
Yeah, you slip away into the ether. Yeah, you're into the bush, right?
Yeah, the Homer Simpson meme. And then everybody forgets about Josh, and he doesn't get invited to the frisbee golf or to the beer social or whatever. So, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think that was the exact same. I mean, Dawn and I were talking about this last night, and she brought up the exact same point. Is like, if you go look at the FIRE 101 class that we attempted to do in January and we had to cancel due to capacity constraints of the meeting location, if you went and looked at who was going to attend that meeting, how many of the people that were going to attend those meetings were people that already attend every other FI meeting? And so, like, do they really need FI 101? No, absolutely not. But of course, I think a lot of people, myself included, like, want to be helpful, maybe we all want to hear, if we're going to hear that one little morsel that changes something, right? Which is never going to ever happen in reality. But at the end of the day, I think people just like getting together with their community to, I guess, fly in the face of what Brandon is arguing for here.
Yeah, I think we do. And I think that hopefully there will continue to be some form of an evolution. I was thinking about this after I read this, and I kind of where I am currently, in that, like I said, I'm not really listening to too many podcasts anymore on this topic. But the one thing that I'm not, I guess, seeing as much of, there's tons of content out there about how to get started and your journey along the way, how to optimize and all of that sort of thing. But there's a lot less content about reaching the other side. And I think that's something that you and I have kind of kicked around a little bit. We've kicked the tires on as we've had conversations about, here I am on the other side. You're very close, and you got a lot of decisions that you're going to be making in your life in the next couple of years. I as well, and we're still navigating through what does Lori's, my wife's, journey going to look like. Is she going to step down to a part-time and then eventually? So there's plenty to talk about from that aspect, but I think that that's kind of almost like the lane that we could, or the, the direction that we could sort of carve out is less about the how to get started in the journey along the way, but what happens after.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think that's much more of an interesting conversation. And I get to some point, I mean, we talk about Brandon as an OG. I mean, you talk about, obviously, Mr. Money Mustache and Pete. You've got J.L. Collins, the author of Simple Path to Wealth, et cetera, et cetera. And so many of these people, I think, as they've been in the game, so to speak, for so long, yeah, I mean, it becomes old news to them, and you retire and you're like, yeah, I want to live my life. I don't want to continue to talk about personal finance. Like, I've solved this problem. I'm going to go enjoy the other side of the rainbow, so to speak. But I think, I mean, certainly for myself, I would say it's the biggest anxiety point of them all, right? Is right when you're reaching that precipice. Okay, the thought of one more year syndrome and all the anxiety-inducing decisions that you're getting ready to make, and the calculus of, hey, am I going to have to worry about this, that, and the other? Do I need to save a whole bunch more money for this? What somebody's experience that's been doing this for 1 or 2 years, what somebody's experience that's been doing this for 10 years, what somebody's experience that's been doing this for 20 plus, right? And there's just not enough examples really of people that are doing that are actively still talking about it. And once again, I understand why. Like, who knows? By the time we're both retired, we may be like, hey, we're going to go on a hike and we're going to talk ourselves, but we're not going to like pin microphones to ourselves and have this chat. Like, Josh and Elliot will continue to be friends, but sorry, the rest of the world, I don't know that you're going to pin us to a desk, because the rest of the world is outside these offices, home offices that we're coming to you from. So
yeah, that's funny that you just, the way you mentioned that there, that a lot of these guys have moved on, and then some of them have kind of like dipped their toe, or I guess straddled the line where they've been kind of out and released a whole lot less content. And then you find all of a sudden they kind of find their way back in a little bit, and they're kind of straddling the line in and out of the community. And I mean, I guess it just goes back to, the friendships and maybe being able to be helpful and find, feel that sense of value and purpose that the community has. When you look at somebody like Mr. Money Mustache, who was another one of the OGs, and we got to meet him a year ago and hang out with him a little bit, and that was cool. And I was so surprising that he was at a Camp FI event that we were at, just one of the other attendees in that small group. But I could definitely see where that would be a bit like unnecessary, I guess, when you get to that point. Like, you've been doing this for 15 years or whatever it is, and yeah, what would be the draw, I guess,
right,
other than
right,
people?
Exactly. Yeah,
you're not learning anything new.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember hearing some feedback that had percolated through some attendees during that Camp FI that were kind of upset with his perceived availability during that. And I'm like, he doesn't owe you anything. Like he's fully retired. He could be just chilling on a beach, sipping Mai Tais, use my analogy that I fall back to all the time. But, the fact that he's involved in the community at all still, I think says a lot about him and how much he believes in the concept and the vision. And yeah, and I think it's just like seasons of life too, right? Like, obviously he was married, then divorced, has a kid's out of the house. Like, so now, of course, like, he's got more time. So yeah, I mean, we all kind of everybody has their own life that they are living, and their digital life or the written life is just one aspect that you are seeing. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to. It's the same way that before you and I ever start one of these sessions, we usually are talking for a good 10, 15 minutes before we hit record. And over the time, we've gotten better about just hitting record because we're like, man, I wish we would have had that recorded because that was a good conversation. But, that just is how it is.
Yeah, I was thinking back to your point there about how people were maybe complaining about his availability. And boy, it's a good thing not too many people know me, because they would have complained about my availability too, because I made myself available to no one. I was in bed by 10 o'clock. I was out walking by myself.
That's right. I had to pull double duty for both of us, right?
That's right.
Mean, that was my rationale. Sure.
And kind of going back to I guess even the in-person events, I had a conversation one time with Lori about how I felt like I wasn't as all in on it as she thought I was. We were kind of debating. She's like, "Oh, you're all in. You're starting your own podcast here. You go to all the events. You're traveling for." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess you're right." But then I kind of like debated back with her a little bit. And I said, "Well, I'm kind of straddling the line. I feel like I got one, I'm dipping a toe in, but I'm not it. I'm kind of at the point where, well, you know this about me, that I'm more of an introvert. So getting into those large groups becomes a little bit more difficult for me. What do they say? Does it give you energy or take energy away? And whenever I'm around a crowd of more than like 3 or 4 people, it definitely sucks the energy out of me, just because I get anxious and nervous and everything. But yeah, I think that you can get what you need from just a couple of events, if that's not your thing, or if you just want to be kind of like a wallflower. You can listen and hear and maybe talk to a few people, and you can exit. It's okay. It's okay to not be all in on the community aspect. And some people are all about it, and that's great. I'm glad that there's that out there for people. But yeah, for me, it's like, it's a part of who I am, but it's not everything.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a good way of summarizing it. That's what I aspire to be. Like, clearly I'm more extroverted than you are, I think, and I'm probably a bad influence on you as far as getting you to be my +1 to a Camp FI or anything like that. But
no, not at all.
No, I mean, I think it is. You should aspire for balance in your life in pretty much any pursuit that you take. And if something becomes kind of all-consuming, I tend to believe that you should probably take a step back and evaluate, and is that all good for you? What are you sacrificing in order for this to take up as much space as it really is?
Yep.
I know, just as far as like the seasons of life that I kind of mentioned before, and how people kind of, I would say, come in and out of the community and how they invest their time. Like, I know Brandon became a father a little bit later in life, and I think that he had some articles that I believe that he had kind of said that he didn't think that maybe kids were necessarily in the picture for him, and then he became a father. So yeah, do I fault him at all for stepping away from kind of the community that he was so integral in being such a voice of, and focusing on things that are more important, like being a dad, being a musician? He still has a passion for writing code, doing whatever he's doing. Like, absolutely not. Like, to each their own. And I think that is the choose your own adventure that FI really unlocks for any of us, is the time and freedom to do whatever you want with your time.
Yeah, That's well said. I think I had a little bit of FOMO at times where some of these events come up and you're like, oh, I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss out. But grown to I've grown to tell myself it's okay. We said no to something, well, tonight that we're recording this conversation instead. But I had highlighted one of the last paragraphs in the article here that says, the habits that got me to FIRE are the ones that I'm currently trying to unwind. So it doesn't make sense to hang out with people who are still driving towards FIRE at the fastest rate possible. And I went back to one of his latest podcast episodes. I didn't listen to this one at the time, but this one might be many months old at this point, where he was talking about how he met with Ramit Sethi a couple of different times, and in one of the conversations, and I read this somewhere too, I think in one of Ramit's books, where he said that your prime spending years are between the ages of 40 and 60. And Brandon, at the time that he recorded that, he said he was 43. So he's 15% of the way through those prime spending years. And he doesn't want to be necessarily budgeting. He doesn't want to be tracking his spending. He doesn't want to burden himself with all that stuff, because he just feels like he keeps falling back on those same habits. And that's the mindset that I'm in. And I'm almost 50% of the way through those prime spending years, and I'm still trying to undo that. And I get anxiety and stress where I'm like, one of the points that he made where he said, I don't want to go over budget on restaurants one month and then the following month not go to a restaurant. And that's exactly the conversation that I just had with Lori like a week ago. The holidays came along. We were having a lot of fun, going out with a lot of friends, spending a lot more money than we normally do. And I said, hey, January and February, let's really try to buckle down and spend less. And it's like, why? Because it was a response to a bit of, I don't know, call it anxiety or whatever, that I saw the number and I'm like, holy crap. And I know all the other stuff went out at the same time. And then Lori's telling me, this credit card bill is this much. And I'm like, holy crap. Okay, buckle down. So really still striving to try to unwind those habits myself. So I think that going to some of those events or even listening to the podcasts, it kind of is like reinforcing some of those things where I'm still kind of feeling like the guy who's on the path instead of the guy who's past that point.
I'll keep on calling you Smog until we fix your habits.
Oh, speaking of that, in our last conversation, we talked about that stupid little $250 fence repair that I had on one of my rental properties where I was just going to go do it myself. And you called me out on it. And I went ahead and had the guy do it. Actually, it was only $225, but I sat here in my office, ordered the supplies from Lowe's. He went and picked them up, had the job done that day. And I was like, wow, why did I consider that? That's so stupid.
It was a lot easier hitting that easy button, right? And
it was.
saying, instead of, just imagine the 3 hours worth of drive time that you would have spent to do that job yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, instead,
yeah.
I was able to take advantage of the last couple of days that have been absolutely gorgeous here in January, and took some walks and hikes and cleaned up my yard a little bit more, and did the things that I really wanted to do as opposed to something that I felt like I had to do.
Yeah.
Thanks
for
calling
me. I don't know, Josh, that the credit card bill is going to be $225 higher.
Plus supplies, Elliot.
Oh, yeah. Plus supplies. Yes.
That was just labor.
Yeah. Those couple bags of concrete and 4 posts.
Yeah, it was like $90.
Yeah.
Those habits, though.
It is.
Those are the habits.
So, exactly to what Brandon is saying here is the habits that got you here are not going to be the ones that are going to serve you going forward. And I think that is important to call out. But I will say the line where he says it doesn't make sense to hang out with the people who are still driving towards FIRE at the fastest rate possible. I would maybe agree with that statement, but I think we've talked about on the podcast multiple times how that is kind of the OG mentality, but I would say the modern day FI world doesn't really follow that mentality anymore. Like I'm still kind of sticking to my guns in that regard, but I think I'm in the minority of, and I'm only doing that because of the proximity to my FI date. Like if I was another 5 years away, I don't know if I would just be, quote, grin and bearing it. It would just be like, yeah, hey, maybe I'd go find something else that I'm enjoying a lot more. Who cares if it takes a little bit longer?
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like I'm trying to step away or anything like that. I'm still, to an extent, with a lot of the OGs kind of going by the wayside, so to speak, or moving on to more exciting things in their own lives. It opens the door for guys like you and I to maybe help bring some of the new folks along, and that's always rewarding to me, to be able to help continue to spread the word and spread the message, and to anyone that'll listen either in person or on this podcast here. I haven't had a whole lot of luck converting a whole lot of people, but we're still trying. I think this is valuable for anyone to understand these concepts and apply them to their own life, so that they can either from just the perspective of trying to do a better job with their personal finances, so that they're not living paycheck to paycheck, all the way to the situation where they're retiring early or anywhere in between.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'll admit, I have not finished the latest episode of Choose FI. I have heard about half of it so far. And I got to the point where Jonathan was talking about that he's unlocked a new level of FI, of where it is just awareness of the concept, right? Of how many people it's like, oh yeah, I became aware of FIRE, the FIRE community, or FI, or whatever at this date, or from this person, or this blogger, or this podcast, or whatever. And yeah, it could be as simple as this, is you let's say out for a hike, and you meet somebody and you're like, you're a young guy, how in the heck are you out here all the time? And it's like, yeah, you never know what the quote unquote butterfly effect of that conversation really could be. Is, yeah, you tell somebody you met on the hiking trail, and they tell their kid, and off it goes, right? Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, good point.
As they would say, the fire is spreading, right?
I've heard that somewhere before.
As always, if you've stuck along with us for this long, we really appreciate you listening to the podcast today. If you liked what we were talking about, give us a thumbs up. Any feedback is much appreciated on any platform that you're listening to us on, and we really appreciate it. Thanks, Josh.